Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to BioShock Infinite. I think we found a carnival. Looks like this place is called Soldier's Field. That's actually a pretty generic name though. Like there's actually a Soldier's Field in my hometown. Basically, it's just the name of a park that's been dedicated to, Soldiers Memorial. It's not an actual graveyard. It's just basically the same idea as Memorial Day. Well, that's a pretty sad selection. Yeah, I'm not going to be spending money on the pistol, thanks. Still saving up for some salts upgrades. Or vigor upgrades, sorry.
Soldier's Field, built in 1903 by the hand of a prophet.
Interest is a prophet having a bunch of carnies and carousels.
The place is themed to equip children with national service.
You mean the military?
Train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old.
Did you write that?
No.
That's actually from the Bible. Proverbs. Well, it's good to know that they've got at least one of those around here somewhere. I think that eagle was singing the national anthem.
I can open this if you want.
It's locked.
Oh, this won't take long at all.
And they had a lockpick
All
just
yours.
there, so you can demonstrate that, some of the locks which you are required to pass only need a hairpin, but you can get bonuses like salts
Feel better already.
by finding lockpicks and having Elizabeth use them to get inside. And there are also these safes. Usually require something like 3 or 5, and it's actually a nice painting.
I found a lockpick.
Oh. Yeah, she did. Didn't quite find it myself just yet, but just a sec. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, it was glowing in the background there, if you saw.
Days at Comstock House was simple. Hard work, sure, but simple. Wringing the linen, scrubbing the floors. Lady Comstock, she even had a kind word now and then. Almost enough to make me think I had a place in their world. God made foolish girls so he could have something to play with.
Oh yeah. Almost forgot this was here. Ah yes, women's intuition. For when a woman says something that goes right over a guy's head. I'd say the power company could come in handy right about now.
Kate, shut up tight. Now how are we going to get to the airship?
Let me see if I can get that gate open by hand.
By the way, have you ever tried to lift like a metal garage door?
Shocky jockey. Who needs the power company?
Some fool's alternative to electricity.
Doesn't seem to work very well.
But yeah, those metal gates are actually a lot heavier than they look. I mean, they are solid steel. And hey, look, it's the Ferris wheel.
There it is. First Lady. Looks like it's heading for the dock.
That will take us to Paris.
Sure enough.
Just stay close.
Yes, Mr. DeWitt.
Call me Booker.
All right, Booker. Should we head to the gondola or take a look around the boardwalk? I suppose a place like this might have much we'd find useful.
Might as well have a look around. Look at the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's a giant bird-shaped automaton. With a nasty temper. Ice cream parlor.
Hot dogs! Get 'em hot here! We got dogs for the boys, dogs for the girls, dogs for everyone in between. They're hot, red hot dogs here! What do you give to a hungry little patriot? What's more red, white, and blue than a hot dog? Get your red hots! Get your hot dogs here!
I'll take one.
One for the nice man and his pretty little daughter. What do you say, fellow?
How old are you? Do you know why you were hired to come and get...
South of 40, north of you.
Hot dogs! Get 'em hot here! We got dogs for the boys, dogs for the girls, dogs for everyone in between. They're hot, red hot dogs here! What do you give to a hungry...
Our ice-cold Colombian ice cream is a culinary marvel. Try it yourself!
It's actually a lot cheaper than those hot dogs. Of course.
What are you, Mr. DeWitt? Some sort of...
I'm a, independent contractor. Used to work for the Pinkertons and such. Not something you'd want gracing a resume.
Pinkertons? Weren't they the ones they'd call in to settle things when the workers took to striking?
Settle. Oh, that's a word for it.
Accept no low-quality foreign-made substitutes.
And when I came to Washington, there were few in Congress who saw my vision for Columbia. But it is the burden of the prophet to bring the wicked to righteousness. For what am I, if not a mirror to reflect the face of God?
One trouble with this area is how much dialogue there is.
Oh, really?
If we don't watch out, we're gonna find ourselves in a kind of trouble you've never imagined.
From the bellhops and scullery maids? Oh, Edward, you've really got to put that feverish imagination of yours to good use.
So, Mr. DeWitt, is there a woman in your life?
There was. She died.
How?
Giving birth.
You have a child?
Why,
No.
we gave them the word of the prophet.
That's true, but what if they want something more?
More than that? Such as?
Labor unions? 8-hour days?
Oh, well, might as well throw in a chariot of gold while we're at it. Oh, you're starting to sound like Daisy Fitzroy.
You heard what happened in Comstock Center and Monument Island. These people cannot be reasoned with. Father Comstock's going to have to put a stop to it. If he can.
The prophet can loft a city into the clouds and look into the future. Oh, I don't think a few Chinamen, Negroes, and Patty O'Malley's are gonna worry him much.
The idea of extra dialogue is good, it's just it tends to step on its own shoes. A lot. Unfortunate amount of overlap, I mean. You've probably noticed by now. So, I would use possession on that vending machine, but,
For a moment of silent prayer for the victims of today's brutality.
Odd.
Aha! I can buy it now. This is actually, it has the ability to create a cascading effect in which nobody is able to shoot except for you.
More money.
Great.
Anyway, I'm not possessing these vending machines, because if I do, then people are going to panic, and that brings in the soldiers, and I don't have any more dialogue. I can't hear any more dialogue after that, I mean. And you know, they put in a lot of effort into world building around here. Least I could do is enjoy it.
When I was a girl, I dreamt of standing in a room looking at a girl who was and was not myself, who stood looking at another
in
girl.
gardening, Mr. DeWitt?
They frown on gardens in my part of town.
And where's that?
The part with no gardens.
I saw it as the beginning of a career in physics.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
When I was a girl, I dreamt of standing in a room looking at a girl who was and was not myself, who stood looking at another girl who also was and was not myself. My mother took this for a nightmare. I saw it as the beginning of a career in physics.
Hey, wait a second. That guy with a mascot hat.
Duke and Dimwit. You know. Remember, boys and girls, don't be a dimwit. How could you not know that?
Must be something particular to Columbia.
I loved those stories when I was a kid. They are a bit off-putting.
A little too direct. But yeah, that one mascot guy in the back was wearing a hat.
Get your cotton candy here.
So I have to wonder, did he put the hat on specifically? Or was he wearing it underneath the giant head?
There you go, little miss. Cotton candy here. It's your cotton candy.
I think that's the second cotton candy she's gotten today. Oh man, and she finished it in a hurry too.
Time's coming, she says. You ready?
It's your cotton candy.
Oh, a carousel.
What?
I was just imagining you on the carousel.
Well, imagine no longer. Wee. 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 Okay, I'm done. Nice touch.
Someone gave it to me, I promise. I ain't never smoked one before.
They smoke 'em if you got 'em, pal. I ain't no gendarme.
No. Thank you, sir.
Odd that he would use that term. Gendarme, by the way, is essentially the term for military as police.
Hello?
Hello yourself. Keep your hands where I can see them.
In other words, the army acting as
Mr. DeWitt.
civilian police.
I see you found our bestseller.
It's something that the French do, hence the French name.
Beauty, innit? She's lever action, but that lever sure works smooth.
It's something that's actually rather specifically forbidden in the United States. There are issues with, you know, the British Army taking liberties back when we weren't an independent colony. Ooh. Hey! That's just enough. Now I can actually go back and open that safe from earlier.
Okay, just let the children enjoy the show as long as they like, and at least until the Prophet tells us more.
The Prophet will tell us what to do. I don't know what to tell the boys. They ask so many questions, and I just don't know the answers.
Alright.
Can you unlock this?
I can do that.
I figured he didn't want to see me walk all the way back here.
Got it.
And that's why I bothered. 200 all at once. Very nice.
You know, Sally's boy was in Comstock Center.
Has she had any word?
Not yet.
Oh, Lord. Lord.
Well, I suppose it's a nice enough touch that the whole craziness is not entirely forgotten, even here. But I think I've wasted enough time for now.
We need to summon the gondola if we intend to reach that airship.
These seem to be the controls that summon her.
Easy enough.
Looks like this runs exclusively on shock jockey.
Of course it does. Where in the hell are we gonna find that?
Look! Come see the future of power at the Hall of Heroes.
Huh. Well, that's convenient.
Gentlemen, the false shepherd is loose in the streets of our fair city. Will you suffer the shame of allowing your wives and your daughters to fall prey to his machinations? Or will you act? Act for your womenfolk. Act for your prophet. Act.
Well, luckily that doesn't seem to have summoned any guards. I guess we can just keep going. I mean, it's not like everybody knows what Booker looks like just yet. Oh, wait. Well, time to show what the carbine can do. Or not. Maybe I'll just use the shotgun instead. Yeah, you can see the traps going off here. Oh, some other people here. Somebody's freaking out over another one of those crow traps. But yeah, the carbine is nice and accurate, even at range. It does even more damage than the pistol. And I think it's got a bigger clip, too. It might be smaller, though. It's hard to tell with, like, the 70% magazine size thing. But, yeah, that wasn't so bad. I suppose, in part, that's because I was just facing cops again. They're, not quite the same thing as, you know, the regular troopers. Anyway, I suppose I could do a little stealing around here now. Civilians are probably long gone.
Hall of Heroes closed until further notice.
Then there won't be a line to get in.
But as you might imagine, we'll be coming back here later.
Need money? Take it.
So I just won't worry about stealing just yet. Instead...
Oh, what the hell?
Oh.
Is something wrong?
Nothing I can't fix.
Well, this might take a while. Hang on, everybody. And while we wait, do you know what else was invented in the decades just before 1912? That's right, the amusement park. As such, we are traveling yet again to History Corner to take a look at how the Columbian Exposition was once again the center of attention. Fair days. The modern amusement park may not have come into being until the end of the 19th century, but its precursors, pleasure parks and trade fairs, have been around for centuries. The modern fair has its origins in the religious festivals of the Roman Empire, with people coming from miles around to pay their respects to the god or goddess of the day. Traders and craftsmen had the opportunity to sell their wares to maybe 100 times as many customers as they would see on a normal day. So they would set up a temporary booth along one of the main roads and sell their wares to all passers-by. As the medieval period began, there were, well, fewer gods to celebrate, and While there were still plenty of saints to take their place for the purpose of religious holidays, it gave fairs the opportunity to secularize, to be more about the tradesmen than about the gods. Over time, fairs grew in both size and scope, until they weren't just about showing people good wares, they were also about showing people a good time. Various entertainment acts gravitated towards fairs for the same reason that artisans did. Paying customers were showing up by the boatload. At first you had simple entertainments like traveling musicians and jugglers, and then you also had other simple entertainments like prostitutes, gamblers, drugs, and cockfights. Then there's freak shows, which are at least as old as the mid-1500s, and at no point in 500 years have they been considered a fully reputable form of entertainment. In fact, throughout most of their history, the big problem with fairs has been the criminal element. Stuffing a massive number of people into a small area has always brought on the risk of stampedes and riots, but even beyond that, fairs attract criminal professions just as much as legal ones. One of the longest running fairs in English history was the Bartholomew Fair of Smithfield in London. The first fair began in 1133, and it would operate annually until 1855, a stretch of 722 years. The Bartholomew Fair survived civil wars, religious wars, and then even more civil wars. It survived the shutdown of the monastery that initially sponsored it, and it survived the mechanization of the English textile industry, which was the trade it was originally based around. What eventually did it in was quite simply an overabundance of criminal activity, which was growing past the London police's ability to stop. And a big part of the problem was London's major population growth during the Industrial Revolution. The London police themselves were a fairly modern development at the time, having been founded only 26 years before Bartholomew Fair had to be shut down completely. Fairs are still around today, of course, but then they've specialized in a number of different directions. The most direct descendant, at least in the United States, would be the county and state fairs. At both kinds of fair, folks from around the county or state bring products to enter into competitions and therefore to get noticed by potential buyers. Categories include rural classics like best livestock, best produce, best pie. But these days you can find more urban-centric stuff like art shows, car shows, music shows, and dozens of mechanical rides. Next is the Renaissance Fair, which goes in for the whole historical reenactment crowd, although visitors are not required to wear period-authentic outfits. With their focus on period accuracy, or at least on period relevancy, going to a Ren fair is probably as close as you'll get to experiencing an actual 17th century trade fair, except that instead of selling useful stuff, all the stalls sell expensive tchotchkes like leather mugs, handmade jewelry, and period clothing. I actually got a big-ass handmade ceramic mug when I visited one a few years back. Last, you've got the trade shows and conventions, for which an entire industry gets together to show off all their latest inventions and products, or else a certain fandom gets together to celebrate their favorite form of entertainment. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got professional expos like E3 for video games and the NAIAS for cars. In the middle are festivals for creative types like writing conferences, photography workshops, and Shakespeare in the Park theater shows. And then for fans, you've got sci-fi conventions, Comic-Cons, and PAX. Parking for pleasure. The idea of recreational parks goes back about as far as fairs. For instance, poaching was originally less about hunting rare and endangered animals, and more about trapping rabbits in the Lord's private hunting grounds because you were a peasant in the winter and you were starving. As I said in last week's corner, the idea of national parks, which are open to the public, goes back to around the mid-19th century, but the concept of cultivated public gardens dates back 200 years more. Another London attraction was Vauxhall Gardens, which opened sometime around 1660. Vauxhall was open to anyone who could pay the entry fee of only 1 shilling, but like modern venues, they gouged you on the concessions. And for that fee, you could see plays and concerts, fireworks displays, hot air balloons, and, of course, the gardens themselves. Sadly, Vauxhall also fell victim to London's population boom, and so thanks to increased competition, decaying buildings, and the prevalence of those criminal types, the gardens shut down for good in 1859. A park with a more positive legacy is the Wurstelprater of Vienna. In 1766, the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, who was actually quite liberal for an absolute monarch, declared that his private hunting grounds near Vienna, the Prater, should be opened to the public. This was done just in time for it to become a venue for the golden age of Austrian music, the age of Mozart and Schubert. Other attractions included the usual food stalls, mechanical rides, bowling alleys, and fireworks. In 1823, the Prater hosted the first railroad in Austria, and in 1873, the World Fair came to the Prater. Seedy elements would crop up in Vienna as in London, but the Austrians managed to get a handle on them better than the English, and as a result, the Wurstelprater, a section of the Prater, which began as a bunch of food stands, has survived to become a fully modern amusement park. How the Columbian Exposition changed everything. Okay, so this time I am exaggerating. Still, while fairs and parks have been around for a millennium or more, the prototype of the modern amusement park was probably the Chicago World's Fair of 1893. The White City, as it was also called, was the biggest World's Fair to date, 3 times as big as the next biggest. And the location of Chicago was chosen not only for its central location on America's rail lines, but also because the area was underdeveloped at the time, which gave the fair managers enough room to create a truly massive, if temporary, venue. The center of the exposition was the Court of Honor, a number of buildings which favored a neoclassical style, reminiscent of ancient Greece and Rome. After all, the chief architect of the fair wanted to show off the youthful American spirit, and how better than by copying the Roman Empire and forcing all of your subordinate architects to follow suit? Americans are kind of weird about stuff like that. Each building in and around the court was devoted to a separate industry. There were buildings for agriculture, machinery, horticulture, mining, and, as I've brought up before, electricity. In fact, the Columbian Exposition was the first World's Fair to be illuminated entirely by electrical lights. Concessions, rides, and attractions were only reluctantly included in the fair, and they were pushed as far away from the Court of Honor as possible, onto the Midway Plaisance, so called because the park acts as a sort of bridge between Washington and Jackson parks. Of course, the Midway proved to be far more memorable than the Court of Honor, so much so that Midway is now the common term for where all the rides and food are in modern fairs. The Chicago Midway featured the world's first Ferris wheel. Observation wheels had been built in the past, but none were nearly so big. This wheel was 264 feet or 80 meters tall. It held 36 separate cars, and each car could fit up to 60 passengers at once. It was so popular, it got away with charging the fair's entrance fee for a single ride, and it made back double its cost by the time the exposition closed. The Midway featured sideshows with the usual assortment of unusual talents and disfigured individuals, but it also included a number of ethnic enclaves of dubious authenticity. These included German and Irish villages, Bedouin camps and a Moorish cafe, a Chinese theater, some Native American wigwams, and an African village. Notably, these enclaves were also sorted based on contemporary racial beliefs. So the Irish and German villages sat closest to the Court of Honor, the Asians and Arabs were in the middle, and the Africans and Native Americans were set the furthest away. As a side note, the Streets of Cairo attraction wound up introducing Americans to the belly dance. and this blatant display of sexuality wound up traumatizing a lot of the first people to see it. The Columbian Exposition was the first time a small city was built specifically to take the visitor into an illusory world free of the noise and pollution of real urban centers. No cars or bicycles were allowed, partly to show off the public transportation system, which incidentally led to Chicago's L train, and partly to keep pedestrians safe. But an illusion is all it was. All the whiteness of the White City was achieved through the use of staff, basically a cheap plaster, and by the end of the fair's 5-month run, it was already starting to wear away. Still, its legacy would prove enduring. The first permanent amusement parks on Coney Island were directly inspired by the Exposition, and when Walt Disney revived the amusement park in the 1950s, he would base areas of Disneyland on various themes, such as Adventureland and Fantasyland, much like the themed enclaves of Chicago's Midway. Epcot in Disney World is an even more direct reproduction of the World's Fair experience, with the pavilions of Future World, which show off the latest technologies, and the pavilions of the World's Showcase, which provide much more accurate glimpses into their home nations. Personal thoughts. Escapism is a good thing. Sometimes the world can just feel like a pile of shit. Nobody wants to wallow in shit all day. At the same time, boredom can be a real problem. When you're bored, it feels like the engine in your head is overheating because it's not connected to the drive shaft and you aren't moving anywhere. People will do some really stupid things if they get too bored. And so escaping into a story, chatting with friends, doing something interesting yet pointless, like riding a roller coaster or a carousel, even gambling, having sex, and altering your mental state, these are not bad things. They give you the energy and the motivation you need to wade back into the shit that is real life and resume digging. Some forms of escape can even provide you with insight and perspective, which allows you to make better decisions and hopefully make life a little less boring and terrible. But there is a limit. There is a time when everyone must put aside their escapes and deal with reality. And if someone is incapable of making that decision, then that is when the escape crosses the line into addiction. Anything that's vaguely pleasurable, anything that makes you feel happy or even just satisfied with life, any of that can be an addiction. Adding a chemical addiction on top can make the situation even worse, but ultimately, habits have a greater impact on your life than any chemical. And if that habit takes over, if your collections grow to the point that you cannot live in your house, if you cannot quit your habit without anxiety attacks, if it takes over your life, and every moment is spent indulging your habit or wishing that you were, if your dreams die to fuel your escapes, that is when a habit becomes an addiction. Escapism is a good thing, but only so long as you don't leave reality behind. Thanks for joining me again in History Corner, and I hope I'll see you soon.